Can you tell us the reason why they should stay around and listen?
Find some interesting or valuable insights from the journey that I've had in my career. First and foremost, going from a large public company to then transitioning to a completely different industry, to a very small family-owned business. And then through the course of the decades after that, then selling that company and then becoming part again of a publicly traded company. I have been an American that has been significantly involved with a European-based company. And lastly, perhaps the fact that in many cases, I am a bit of an anomaly in that I am a woman in a manufacturing and medical device manufacturing environment in senior leadership roles, and that is often not very common.
In today's episode of the Diary of a Medical Device CEO, I'm joined by a truly inspiring leader, Jodie Gilmore. With a remarkable career in contract manufacturing, Jodie brings wealth of experience not only in building and growing business, but also in navigating the complexity of selling a business and many other experiences. Her journey is both a masterclass in resilience and a reminder of how much authenticity and perspective is important in leadership. How was Steve Jobs?
He was a fascinating person.
Which were your early challenges at Onyx? Which were the first problems that you faced when you started with Onyx?
Well, I would say a couple of things. The first big challenge, honestly, was working with my husband.
So if you had to share one major leadership lesson, what could it be?
Oh boy, I have to pick one. Stay true to yourself. I would say that, first of all, I always just think of myself as an executive, as a business person, as a leader. I don't naturally just be like, oh, and putting the female in front of it or the woman. I just think of myself as an executive like everyone else. That's rule number one. Never be afraid to just go do it.
Let's dive into this. Hello and welcome to the Diary of a Medical Device CEO. My name is Elio Gramignano and I am the founder and managing director of CommuniD, a European agency specialized in new approaches to sales and marketing in the medical device business. In this podcast, I sit down with some of the most influential leaders, experts, and innovators that are shaping the trends of the medical device business. Open and thought-provoking conversations will dive into the stories behind the people, the challenges outside of the products, and all the insights that are reshaping completely our industry inside out. Whether you work in the R&D, marketing, sales, you're an executive, or simply a person that is passionate about patient outcome, this is the podcast where you will learn, be inspired, and appreciate the importance of being different. Thank you for being here today. Your support really means a lot to us. And if you find value in these conversations, please subscribe. This will help us to increase the reach and bring even better and more meaningful insight for you. Let's start. Jodie, if someone has just clicked on this podcast, can you tell us the reason why they should stay around and listen?
Well, I would hope that they could find some interesting or valuable insights from the journey that I've had in my career. First and foremost, going from a large public company to then transitioning to a completely different industry, to a very small family-owned business. And then through the course of the decades after that, then selling that company and then becoming part again of a publicly traded company that continued to grow and develop. So I think from that perspective, the various elements of my career, I think could be hopefully interesting for someone and have some interesting insights. I think also too, the fact that I have been an American that has been significantly involved with a European-based company and have been doing business around the world. for quite some time. So perhaps there could be some insights drawn from that and my experience in engaging with folks from different cultures and different countries very significantly over the past several decades. And lastly, perhaps the fact that in many cases I am a bit of an anomaly in that I am a woman in a manufacturing and medical device manufacturing environment in senior leadership roles. And that is often not very common and hopefully will be much more so common in the future.
So, who is Jodie Gilmore, and how would you describe your professional journey?
As a person, I would say I'm highly driven. I'm incredibly loyal. I'm very intellectually curious, and I like to have fun while always learning and growing. No matter where you are in life, there's always that opportunity. I would say that my professional journey has been highly intentional. With very specific choices made, and I'm always kind of thinking about the next, 5-10 years, what's happening. And so it's always been very intentional and very guided, but I think also with a nice little sprinkling of luck in there as well. And chance encounters and chance opportunities have been sprinkled in. So I would say that both significant intentionality and a nice sprinkling of luck have really been kind of the keys of my professional journey.
Influence your approach to leadership and business strategy?
I would say the marketing foundation, of course, is incredibly important because it really focuses on the customer needs and developing a strong value proposition for your customer and your market. I think in my mind, the combination of marketing and finance really helps to strongly support the fact that whatever your business endeavor, there has to be a strong financial reason. You have to deeply be able to understand the numbers to be able to generate a truly strong value proposition as a business. In my mind, the two things combined are really important as the core strategy for a business. If you don't deeply understand your customers and the markets and how you're going to attack that, and if you don't understand how you can make a proper return on investment, those two things go hand in hand in order to make a really strong long-term business proposition.
You started your career in two big giants, Lockheed Martin and Apple. How these companies, the experience of these companies stuck into your business experience?
I think they were both really good companies to start with. And ultimately taught me kind of three key things, or reinforced three key things. One is really know your customers and truly understand what delights them and what they need. Deeply understand your market and where you want to play in that market and how you want to bring a true value proposition to your customers in the market, and know your customers. Competitive intelligence, I mean, that's where I got my start at Lockheed Martin, was understanding the technology and the innovation that was happening in the industry and providing competitive intelligence for the engineers that were working on projects. So again, it really reinforced those three key concepts. Deeply know your customer and get really close to them, truly understand your market and the technology, and know who's competing against you. And I think those things really helped to reinforce the background that I had with both marketing and finance.
And let me know a little bit of gossip here, because I heard that you met Steve Jobs in your times at Apple. How was Steve Jobs, or what the people around him used to say about him?
Sure. Yes, he was a fascinating person, and he was somebody that was really quite captivating. He could also be somebody that you either liked or did not like, and quite frankly, on the reverse, he either liked you or he did not like you. And so he could be quite a polarizing figure in that aspect, but he was truly a visionary who really deeply understood the emotional connection that people have with a product or a company. And that was really the kind of heart that drove Apple, was that emotional connection, not only to the product, but also to the company that was serving that product. He was an incredibly convincing person, and he was super driven. And that's also the reason why when I left the company, I did not accept the sit-down meeting that he wanted to have with me, because I knew that would inevitably change the path that I had chosen. And I really felt committed to kind of making that change. I deeply loved the company. Apple was an incredible experience, but I knew that my next step was to be moving on in a different direction, and that having that meeting would have probably made it impossible for me to continue
to change,
to make that same decision. Exactly.
That's interesting, because you moved from Apple to a medtech company. That is two completely different words. So was it a deliberate shift, or was an opportunity? There was an opportunity that sparked that transition. What happened?
Well, LVO was a little bit of both. So it was very deliberate in the fact that both myself and my husband were deeply entrenched in our existing companies in high tech. I was with Apple, he was with IDEO product development, and we loved what we were doing, and there was a great opportunity to continue forward. It was a bit luck and fortune that his family was involved in a small business that they had acquired in Memphis, Tennessee, and kind of really resurrected from the ashes, if you will. And ultimately, they had been talking with us. We were consulting with them for many, many years, and eventually made the decision to leave our companies and join this family business, because we felt like we had the right skill sets to kind of take it to the next level and take it in a new direction. So it was a little bit of luck and a little bit of intentionality.
Okay, Jodie, so you moved from Apple to a contract manufacturer that was called Onyx Medical. What was your role at Onyx when you started?
When I started, my role was the leading sales and business development, sales and marketing. So I was officially the vice president of sales and marketing at Onyx Medical.
And what was the difference between a consumer-driven market to a contract manufacturing that is clearly very, very highly specialized and regulated, but also more a B2B environment than Apple?
I think the biggest difference was the fact that I went from an area where you were really focused on end products to customers, and those consumers, as you said, to much more of a business to business environment. At the same time, what struck me the most as well was the fact that I came from an environment where I thought was incredibly innovative and really high tech. I thought med device would be somewhat similar, but of course, because of a lot of reasons, one, because many of the technologies are already incredibly effective, and because of the regulatory environment, things don't move quite as quickly, and the technology doesn't move quite as fast. But the same principles apply. You really have to understand your customer, and I'll go back to this time and time again. You have to know your market, and you have to understand where you want to play and differentiate yourself. So all of those principles were the same. I used to always say, you should stick with what you know. You should do it incredibly well. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Try and really make sure that you can deeply stand out in the area where you choose to compete. And those concepts are really the same, whether you're dealing with a consumer market or whether you're dealing with a business-to-business environment like we had it on.
Innovation is still innovation, but probably in a highly regulated market has a completely different approach than with a super consumer-driven company like Apple. Yeah, no, that's clear. Which were your early challenges at Onyx? Which were the first problems that you faced when you started with Onyx?
Well, I would say a couple of things. The first big challenge, honestly, was working with my husband and working with my family. Working with my family was actually quite easy. It was my husband's family. But I would say definitely working with my husband and kind of learning that dynamic, I would say was definitely probably the biggest challenge early on. I think the second challenge was going into a true manufacturing environment from product management and product marketing, where I was in an environment previously where it was just a completely different type of environment to a much more rigid, structured manufacturing environment. But I actually quite liked it. I've always been a very hands-on person. I always liked to see where, as you say, where the rubber hits the road. And so from that perspective, it was really fun and interesting for me to be directly in touch with and involved with the day-to-day operations versus more of the strategic planning and the product management and product marketing side of things.
I still have one last question that is related to your past at Apple, because I think Apple is a fantastic used to be and is still a fantastic company for marketing strategy. So I guess that you probably learned a lot there. And then our industry, the medical device industry, is clearly less sophisticated when it comes to marketing. So what did you use of your past experience when you started your marketing campaigns or your marketing activities?
I would say a couple of things. One is really getting to know the customers incredibly well, trying to build up those relationships, and also do market research. That I think in market research and competitive intelligence is something that maybe we don't do as much in the contract manufacturing side of things, but I think is incredibly important. So one of the very first things that I did is I, even before we decided to join the company, is do significant due diligence and really understanding the market, the competitors, the landscape. And then once I became part of the company, then really putting together a long-term strategic plan that could help us kind of bridge the gap from where we are today to that ideal end state, or the ideal state in the next, let's say, 10 years, and how we would kind of navigate through that process. And again, it goes back, and I might sound like a broken record, but it really goes back to understanding how you want to play in that market, which product segments, how you want to demonstrate your value to those customers, and really specifically honing in on how that aligns best with what you already have and what you can really deliver. And again, I think that takes from my experience at Apple and allowed me to apply it successfully at Onyx Medical.
So after a few years, if I recollect what I know about you, after a few years, Onyx was sold to Elos Medtech. By the way, how many years you run the business before the acquisition?
So I joined the company in 1997, and it was 2015 when we were acquired. So
okay, so
long time.
Yeah, significant amount of years. What made Onyx an attractive acquisition target? What were the key factors that made Elos Medtech to deal with the Onyx?
Mm-hmm. I would say a couple of things. I think, first of all, kind of fundamentally, we were a very strong sound business. We did not seek a transaction because we were troubled or because we felt like there was a concern. We sought a transaction because we felt like there was a potentially larger, brighter future ahead for the company. The fundamentals were that we had, for the prior 10 years, had demonstrated double-digit compound annual growth year over year and really strong bottom line margins. But we also recognized that we were serving some of the largest orthopedic companies in the world, some of the largest medical device companies in the world. And at the end of the day, we were one facility with four walls and a roof in Memphis, Tennessee. And we felt like there was a bigger opportunity for us to be part of a larger organization that could really help us best serve our customers. And so that was kind of the impetus. I think another reason aside from the fundamentals, why we made a potentially good acquisition target, and we had for many years had quite a few people that had been coming kind of randomly and seeking to partner with us. And I think that the fact that we were quite specialized and had a pretty specific niche that we were able to then serve our customers in a really strong way, I think that also really helped the business overall be attractive.
And what were the biggest challenges in selling the company? And I'm really interested from a financial standpoint, from an operational standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint.
I would say the biggest challenges, and if it backed up a little bit, we were, again, this theme of intentionality, we were incredibly intentional with the process that we went through. So we started looking at building the business and how we were going to continue to take it to the next step in 2010, 2011, and then started kind of building up to a point where we felt like in 2013 into 14, we should probably start seeking a potential partner, either somebody that we would acquire or trying to expand organically or possibly be acquired by somebody else. We were very then specific about the types of companies that would be a good fit and would not be a good fit. So again, somebody who is really focused on customers and serving the market, somebody that wanted to continue to be in med device and felt that that was really the most important strong market for them. Someone who was incredibly highly regulated and had a really strong quality system, and that was also very innovative in what they did. So really trying to find somebody with those four kind of aspects combined with, honestly, a global footprint. We had a place in the United States, and we thought it would be good if they had, if they had a presence in other continents and other places such as Europe and in Asia. And so those were really kind of the guiding principles for what we were looking for. As a result, it made the search pretty specific and fairly limited. We also knew that there was a possibility that we might not make any transaction, and that was okay. If we found the right fit, we could potentially do a deal, but if we didn't find a fit, that was okay too. In the end, Elos Medtech was a really outstanding choice and a really good fit for us from a long-term strategic perspective.
And you moved from Onyx, being an executive of Elos. What did your husband do?
So he was running the engineering and manufacturing side of the business. And prior to the transaction, actually, so we were kind of running the company, and then I was basically in that CEO president role, kind of overseeing the whole operation. And he was very focused on engineering and the manufacturing side of things.
Can you tell me something about the post-merger integration for the employees, for the customers, for the stakeholders, but I would say mainly for employees and customers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the first thing is that we were very transparent prior to the acquisition. So with our leadership team, even in the years leading up to it, we made it very clear that it's a possibility that this could be an outcome, is that we would become part of a larger entity or do a transaction with another strategic company. Also, prior to signing the deal, I specifically ultimately did a worldwide trip where I had a sit down with the key decision makers and the key leaders at each of our top customers to let them know that this was something that we were planning to do, and felt that that was really important that they were on board. So having our customers understand the reasons why and being very transparent about why we were doing this, as well as our key leadership and our employees, and not being afraid to share that, because at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that we had a really strong path forward and that we had really good buy-in and engagement from both customers and employees.
Okay. I have another question that comes from my experience. I worked in the US for a European company, and I remember that wasn't easy. There are differences. Now, I would love to understand what merging with a European company was for Onyx and for you specifically, and if there was anything that was surprising you in a positive or negative sense.
I think the first thing that was so surprising to me, I think this journey has been, first of all, a bit softened by the fact that the first step was we were acquired by a company that was a Swedish company. So the Scandinavian business mentality is quite interesting. And so I feel like it wasn't such a shock. But what was really cool is we closed the deal in April of 2015. My first executive leadership meeting together was in May in Sweden. And from day one, everything was in English. And I had a seat at the table and was expected to immediately start contributing to major decisions and being part of the senior leadership, very active part of the senior leadership in the strategic process. So that was actually delightfully surprising in a very positive way. And then I also got to learn a bit more about kind of the Scandinavian mentality. And some of the great things are that it's incredibly collaborative. It's quite open. It is very competitive. They want to really succeed and do well, but they also expect everybody to kind of be on the same page. And so it's not so confrontational. And it's much more, again, collaborative is really the best word, kind of trying to bring everybody together. Sometimes on the negative side, then it's maybe not quite as quick. So in the United States, sometimes we tend to just kind of make decisions very quickly. People are going to get on board or they're not. And so it's a little bit different, but it was really I think a very good way to become involved, because then we became part of a bigger family, and we were then able to really kind of insert and inject our DNA into the bigger company. I think
definitely you were glad of going into the Scandinavian or Nordic company. Would have been more difficult with the language and the culture, maybe in the Mediterranean, where I come from. But looking back, what key lessons do you learn from this acquisition process? And if you would be to sell a company today, what would you do differently?
So in general, I think the lessons learned are that you have to, especially when you're dealing with different cultures and if you're dealing with different languages or potential language barriers, I think you have to really be careful about listening and understanding. So actively listening with the intent to understand what the other person is saying and not making any assumptions. And I think that's a general business rule that's super important, but especially when it comes to dealing with folks from different cultures and that have a different mother tongue, because you want to make sure that you understand what they're saying and don't just assume something. So I think that's a really important lesson learned. I think that just be human, be real. Don't be afraid to say what your concerns are. I think sharing that information is important. And so I think those are things that were lessons learned, but absolutely things that I think I would encourage everyone else to do. If you're not certain about something, ask the question. If you think there's something that needs to be addressed, say it. Don't be afraid to kind of say, I'm not really sure how to navigate this. Help me. So I think that's very good from a lessons learned. Things that I would do again. I really feel like I think we really made the right choice. I think I would encourage everyone who's ever considering a major move or a company sale or an acquisition to, again, be super intentional. Think about the values that you have, what you want to make sure that you achieve, and what you want to avoid. And absolutely let that guide your decision-making process. And if it feels wrong and it feels not right, don't do it. I mean, follow your gut. I don't know that there's anything I would have done significantly differently. I feel like it worked out all quite well, and really how I had hoped it would. So yeah, I think if I were to do it all over again, I feel like I would do things in a very similar way.
It sounds like, my definition of selling a business is somehow that you're losing something because you're giving away something. Instead, from your words, it looks like you gain something, and that's an interesting element. So the fact that you're suggesting go do it, it's a very interesting suggestion.
Yeah. Again, I think if you sit down and spend the time up front to think about the type of environment or the outcome that you want to drive and the outcome you want to avoid, and you make sure that you're try not to be in a position where you have to do anything, so that it is truly your choice to decide whether you're going to partner or not, then I think you really can't lose, as long as you do your due diligence and, again, stay true to your values and your core. And I think if you do that, I would encourage everybody to do that, but you have to sit down and think about it. And it's not about the money or financials. It's really about that long-term value proposition and feeling really good at the end of the day about what has happened and what has transpired. And it was genuinely nice. We did gain something. We went from being an only child to being part of a strong, tight-knit business family. And that was really nice.
Jodie, Elos Medtech went through multiple acquisitions, not only Onyx. So it's the result of a few acquisitions. And I can imagine that there's been the same process with all the companies that have been acquired. So you're acquiring a company, but you're also acquiring a different culture, a different leadership style, a different way of working, procedures, and everything. How does combining all these personality generates complexity. Bringing everyone together under one vision, how difficult is to bring everyone under one vision?
So when Onyx Medical became part of Elos Medtech, Elos had a history of acquiring companies and kind of pulling them together. But it was true to say that at that time, each of the companies was still operating essentially as an individual fiefdom, if you will, or a very individual, independent entity. And so one of the first things, of course, that we try to do, which is oftentimes difficult, is really make sure that we standardize on the company name and Elos Medtech, and really try and build that culture of who is Elos Medtech, what do we stand for, what do we care about. So your typical, making sure that you can rally around a common vision and the core values is really important. But we also recognize that strategically, we needed to continue to shift to where we were operating collectively in a stronger way. So that's when we started really to develop the strategic umbrella, I call it, and really developing kind of the business unit model concept to try and make sure that we were driving. We wanted to be have a nice balance between individual kind of flexibility and the ability to execute in an entrepreneurial way, while also being very aligned by our common vision, our values, and that business unit strategy wherever we were operating in the world. So you kind of want that red thread so everybody understands how they can move the needle and how they're helping to support the overall long-term strategy of the company. Are type A people with strong personalities that inevitably you will have some of these clashes. And quite frankly, it's good because I think it's important to be surrounded with a strong team of people with different opinions and different ideas about how to achieve something. So in my mind, that actually makes a stronger organization. How you address that and how you resolve that is really important. And in my mind, it's two things. One is focusing on the common end goal and making sure that everybody understands, okay, this is where we're trying to go. This is what we're trying to ultimately achieve. And then discussing how to get there. Oftentimes those classes are really more about the way of getting there. So you have to kind of reinforce the core of what is it that we're ultimately trying to achieve? Do I understand what you're saying? And how can we kind of find that middle ground? And really kind of talking it through. And also at the end of the day, then you have to be able to come to consensus, or if not consensus, alignment and decision. So that you have to basically ultimately make decisions and then say, okay, this is the path that we're going to achieve. I will say that was one of the things that was slightly challenging, again, with kind of that Swedish or Scandinavian type culture, was that sometimes it felt like that decision-making process maybe could have happened a little faster. But it's also a really strong thing to be able to say that everybody is aligned and on the same page. And I do think it makes a strong company if you can make sure that your leadership and your team really deeply understands and is all on the same page about how we need to move forward.
Yeah, you mentioned, and I think, by the way, I think this is the secret of mergers in the contract manufacturing business. And we have seen many mergers and the ability to balance the integration with the respect of the legacy. I think it's a very important element. Now, you mentioned the split between divisions and business units, but you also have plans in Europe, in several areas of Europe, in the United States, in China. How do you combine these business differences with the regional differences? Is there a super formula that can help?
Well, I don't know that there's a formula. I do think it's important to acknowledge that there are business differences, there are regional differences, and you have to acknowledge that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. So you have to be a bit flexible, and then you have to really rely on strong leadership and strong management to make sure that you're driving things in the right way. So I think that you can't come with we're gonna have everything be exactly uniform, because that doesn't work and it's not realistic. But you do need to make sure that everybody understands and is all driving towards the same strategic aim and towards the same key imperatives.
I've in the past I've read a book about the cultural differences and a different way of communicating according to the culture you're talking to, and saying, like, for instance, there is a huge difference between how Americans talk and reach a consensus, and how instead Germans talk and reach a consensus. I don't know, and I've always wondered if this is something that you can learn, or something that you have native as a native ability. Do you think that dealing with multiple culture is something that you develop by doing, or you need to have a certain ability of connecting with people?
Honestly, LVO, I think it's both. So for me, I think I'm naturally a people person. I do think one of my strengths is kind of my emotional intelligence and kind of being able to read a room. But definitely it's a learning experience, and I am no expert by any means. So you kind of learn as you go along and you muddle through. I do think some people are more suited to that than others because they're naturally more attuned to what's happening around them and to the subtle cues that you see. But I don't think I'm necessarily any kind of expert in this. And it's just, you just have to have the desire to want to try and make sure that you understand and be okay to build those personal relationships. And also say, if, let's say you're in a meeting and somebody says something and you're kind of taken aback or struck by it, afterwards, call them up and or ask them, hey, I needed to ask you this question. Don't be afraid to do that, or even to say, did I come off in the wrong way? I didn't want to do that. Let's make sure that we're on the same page. I think it all gets down to those personal relationships that you build with people, because that allows you to weather a lot of bumps in the road.
Let's talk a little bit about the strategy. So the contract manufacturing landscape is changing very, very rapidly. And I appreciate that Elos strategy is to move from a standard contract manufacturing entity into what is called a CDMO, a contract development and manufacturing organization. What does it mean for Elos to make this shift?
I would say a couple of things. First of all, this is something that has always been part of the Elos Medtech DNA, and is honestly one of the things that drew me and our company, Onyx Medical, to Elos Medtech, because of some of the innovative work that they were doing, not only with their own products, but with regulatory submissions, and FDA kind of involvement. So I think that this is something that's always been part of that DNA on all sides of the business. Also something that we tried to do very significantly at Onyx Medical prior to choosing to go down the path of just being a contract manufacturer. We had 42 510Ks of our own of products that we had developed and put out there, but then decided, well, it's probably not a good idea to be competing head to head when you're a super tiny company with companies like Johnson & Johnson and Stryker and such. So from that perspective, we decided to really do more of the collaborative design and development with our customers. But I think it's a really good route to go, and it's really important to really help to support within your area of expertise. So within your core area of expertise, really helping to be as innovative as possible, not only helping to design and develop products together with your customers, but potentially even products that you are bringing to the market and sharing with your customers and having them bring those products to market together with you, I think is a really strong value proposition.
Okay, I appreciate the fact that it's a strong value proposition, but I would say it's not very different to what we hear in the market. So a lot of contract manufacturers, at least the top tier contract manufacturers, are making this evolution. How do you believe that Elos position differently to the others?
I would say a couple of things. Again, I will go back. It sounds like a broken record. Being really close to your customers, and ultimately not only seeing yourself, but actively engaging with them as if you were an extension of their business, I think is really quite important. So being able to deliver true value, and it is accurate to say that lots of people are kind of focusing on this issue, but doing it in a way that's really going to actually drive value for them, and that's going to allow them to be stronger and more competitive. You want your customers to be able to focus on what they absolutely do best and within their specialized area. And then we want to come alongside them and help kind of support that core for them, and be able to take things off of their plate that means they don't have to worry about it. So that when they're planning their product pipeline and they're looking ahead 3, 5+ years about what is going to be happening, they can be kind of plugging in their key partners and those folks that are perfectly suited to help them launch that new system, help them launch that new product. And really be able to support them in a strong way. And I think that's really, and everybody is going to be a little bit different, right? You have to really focus on what you do best. You're not going to be able to be everything to everybody, but really focusing within those areas and then partnering with your customers to help launch those systems and bring those products to market.
Listening to the customer seems to be the holy grail. No, the holy grail does not exist, but one of the key elements. But how do you, because contract manufacturers don't have large, if we compare a contract manufacturer with a manufacturer, generally the manufacturer that is selling to healthcare professionals, there is a huge difference in the dimension of the sales force. So how do you truly understand the market needs with a limited sales force?
Well, I think it's actually not necessarily about sales so much as it is about kind of building out those business development and those customer relationships, and at various levels. So talking with folks that aren't necessarily just in sourcing, talking with the marketing teams, the product management teams, the design and development teams, talking to surgeons, talking to the end users that are going to be using the products, to really understand within your area, what are some of the key issues and challenges that are being that are happening within industry, and kind of trying to address those. Ask the question. Don't assume that you know all the answers. Really deeply dive into what are some of the thorniest issues that you and your team are dealing with. What are the things that your surgeons or practitioners are having? What are those issues? And then trying to really help support that entire ecosystem. Again, you think about the ecosystem and the whole procedure and the patient and the doctor that are performing that procedure, and then apply your specific expertise into that area that aligns with where you're most specialized and best in class.
Repositioning a company is always a complicated task. So which are the biggest challenges in making this internal transition?
I would say a couple of things. One is mindset, kind of starting to think more in that mindset, and then skill set, trying to make sure that you build up the right competencies and the right skill sets within the company, and then being able to have the will to make investments sometimes in advance of actually having that revenue. So I think those are the challenges that stand in the way of doing that.
Talking about the opportunities, which are the biggest opportunity for growth in your space in the future?
I think it really varies from company to company. And so in my mind, I think you focus, again, it goes back to that traditional thing of you have to align what you do really well and what you genuinely know with a need in the market. So for instance, within Elos Medtech, digital dentistry and the evolution from analog to digital and digital dentistry and digital and implant systems, that's a significant shift that's happening in the market. And it's a place that we've been playing for a very long time. And it's a place where we also are helping to support our customers with own products. So that is an example of where I think that we will continue to have the opportunity to drive growth and advancement for the company. Similarly, on, let's say, the orthopedic side and our advanced surgical side, the robotics assisted surgery and enabled surgery, including navigation, is a space that we have been playing collectively. Elos Medtech with Elos Medtech and all of our acquired companies have been playing for more than 2 decades, both on the soft tissue robotic side and on the orthopedic robotic side. And that's a space that we know incredibly well. We've helped to support a number of the major systems, and we believe that that's truly a strength of ours to continue to kind of advance and evolve in that area. So continue to innovate and have really strong technical offerings there. Another perfect example is, for instance, let's say power tools. That's an area that we've been playing for a very long period of time. Many procedures, both orthopedic, dental, and others, require power tools. And that is certainly a core competency for us. And we believe it's a great opportunity for us to continue to drive innovation and development and special offerings to our customers.
Jodie, excellent. Now, I would really like to go back to your personal experience and understand a little bit what you can teach to all of us. So if you had to share one major leadership lesson from your navigation of growth, acquisition, transformations, cultural differences, what could it be? Which could be the main lessons that you can give us?
Oh boy, I have to pick one.
All right,
Maybe
if you
several.
have more than one, accept more than one.
Yeah, I would say most importantly, stay true to yourself. Stay true to what you care about. Do not ever compromise that. Make sure you're in a situation where you feel really good about the company and that the people that you are surrounding yourself with. So stay true to yourself and don't ever compromise on the things that you think that are important or your values, because that's rule number one. And then secondly, I was like, don't be afraid to take chances. Never be afraid to just go do it. Why not? What's stopping you? Maybe you'll fail, maybe, but you'll always be learning. Don't be afraid. Don't ever give up. And if it's something that you truly feel is important, just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is somebody says no. The worst that can happen is maybe you fail and you learn as a result of it. So I think that those are really important, is staying true to yourself, making sure that you don't ever compromise your personal integrity and your values, and just go for it. Don't be afraid to get to know people, ask for opportunities, try and make your own opportunities, and just don't ever give up. Just keep going. I think having grit and determination and building relationships is probably some of the most important things you could possibly do in business and in leadership practice.
What is the most common mistake that you have seen or you believe you've made, and that you may suggest to, all right, be aware that this may happen to you, be careful, don't do it? Sure.
I would say a couple things. One is, first of all, set your ego aside. It's not personal. It's not about you. There should be, in a strong business, there really should be no room for ego, because it's not about me. It's about the customer. It's about us collectively as a company. And so I think that's a really important thing. Sometimes I think people tend to take things a bit too personally, or maybe tend to be too egotistical about things. And I think that that's something that I think is really important. And again, a lesson that I learn every day is be self-reflective. Probably 10 times a day. And I feel pretty good about how I do things, but probably no less than 10 times a day, I think to myself, Jodie, you could have done that better. Or maybe you should have adjusted how you shared that, or how you acted, because that might have given you a better result. So that self-reflection, always learn, always grow from all of your interactions. I think that is the lesson that I take with me every day.
You said before that you are a people person, and knowing you, I can say you definitely are. And I always wonder how people person like you can be flexible and amicable while still maintaining the long-term strategic focus. Managing flexibility and being driven is always something absolutely complex. How do you do it?
Well, I think there's a difference between being nice and a people person and being a pushover that doesn't have the key goal in mind, the end goal in mind. So I think it's, you have to be very clear about the situation that you're in and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And that's not disputed. So then sometimes, again, being a people person doesn't mean that you don't ever have the difficult conversation. Being a people person doesn't mean that you don't ever have to say to them, you know what, I really didn't like how that interaction went, or I didn't really like, it's okay to say that. I mean, I think it's important to be able to talk through those things. And you can do it in a kind, respectful, and professional way. And I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. So you need to get on the same page about what is the goal? What are we trying to achieve? What does good look like? What does it look like when we say that's not okay, that's not acceptable? And just to be able to talk through that, I think is really important and really okay.
And I would like to go back to one of the points that you touched at the beginning. You mentioned the fact of being a female executive and leader in a world that is mainly dominated. Realistically, the medical device industry is a male-dominated industry. How it is like? What is the challenge, and what is the opportunity of being different with that regards?
I would say that, first of all, I always just think of myself as an executive, as a business person, as a leader. I don't naturally just be like, oh, and putting the female in front of it or the woman. I just think of myself as an executive like everyone else. But yes, it's quite obvious when I look around the table many times at business meetings or at board meetings or in leadership meetings, and I recognize that I am a bit of a unicorn, and that there's really not as many women in surrounding me, and not as many women in these positions. So I know that's changing, and I know it will continue to change, and that'll be good, because I'm a strong believer that diversity on an entire team of thought, of experiences, of everything is incredibly important. So I think that the other thing that is beneficial, and I don't like to generalize, but I think oftentimes, for myself at least, as a woman in a situation, again, it goes back to being true to yourself, being very transparent. Don't be afraid to be genuine. And I think also use your innate intuitiveness to understand a situation. And I think that that's always helpful, whether you're male or female. I think it's just really good to be genuinely yourself, be authentic. Don't be afraid to say when you're not sure what to do next. Don't feel like you have to pretend to be anything or anyone. Just be yourself and be honest and open and strong in your convictions. And I think that that's always the right way to go.
Sorry, I would like to remain 1 second there. And how it is to be also a mother executive. Sometimes there is a complexity for women that are also mothers, and managing the family while being fully committed to the business. Sometimes it's complex, sometimes it takes an extra effort. And I would like to understand which is your position.
I think being a parent is something that always comes first. So whether you are a mom or a dad, as a parent, your kids are so important, and you're going to make sure that you do what is best for them. And yes, if you're also working, that means oftentimes you have to make certain compromises, and you can't necessarily, I've traveled a ton. I've traveled, since my kids were itty bitty. And so there's going to be times when I'm just not there. But again, I think it's something that you have to, you're always going to be, that your family is super important, and that's always going to be a super high priority, and that's going to come first when you are a parent. I think it's also accurate to say that I was incredibly fortunate to have an incredible husband and a partner in life who has been very supportive and has been able, between the two of us, we've been a really strong team, because we can't necessarily always both be there for something. So he's either going to be there or I'm going to be there. If we can be there together, that's great. For the major events, we're going to be there, but we're not going to be attending every single, individual little event that happens. So I would say that the other thing, and this is maybe just a me thing, but I've always tried to make sure that I had a good balance while also working a ton. So I come home every night and I try to leave the office at a normal time, and I come home and I make dinner and we sit down as a family and we have dinner. I love it. It's creative. It's fun. It's time with the family. And then oftentimes I will, then go back and do some more work before bed, or wake up super early in the morning and do work. But it is really important to have that balance and to make sure that you can spend time with your family and also make sure that you are doing really well in your job. And you shouldn't have to. You should try and find a balance where you don't have to compromise one for the other.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to compromise. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Changing a little bit, you also serve as a chairman of the board of the Greater Memphis Medical Device Council. How important is networking in our business? Clearly is important everywhere, but in our business, there is a kind of a niche business. How important it is?
Well, I would say it's more about making sure that we build up a strong industry presence. So while yes, it is networking, I think what's maybe even more important or strong than that is that collectively we're working together to advance the opportunities that we have for the medical device industry within our area. And we all have, even though in many ways we are companies that might be competing with each other or serving each other, we have similar needs. And so if there's anything that we can do to make sure that we're building a strong ecosystem that supports our medical device industry in all aspects, that's always good. So workforce development, advocacy for business conditions that help support the growth of our industry, helping to build strong pipelines with universities and build innovation, helping to create a business environment where companies that are both OEM providers as well as the supply chain will want to move to the area to help build a stronger industry. All of these things are incredibly important, and we are stronger together than we are individually. So from that perspective, that networking together is really important.
Two last questions. The first one is, what is Jodie Gilmore's next step?
What is my next step? I will use an old adage from Apple that the journey is the reward. And there's not really ever an end goal. And so, for instance, my husband has been retired for 6 years now. And I think I thought that perhaps I would be retired far earlier than I'm now thinking. But for me, it's about, as long as I'm doing meaningful work and having interesting challenges every day and working together with a team of people that I genuinely respect and admire and enjoy, then that's my happy spot. So this is why, one, I've continued my career, because I genuinely enjoy the people that I'm working with. I genuinely believe in our mission at Elos Medtech and our desire to truly help support the enhancement of lives worldwide. That really resonates. And it's a smart, capable, fun group of people. And we're serving customers that are really in a really meaningful way. So for me, that's something that I always search for. That is also why I chose to become involved in the Greater Memphis Medical Device Council. And it's also why I chose to become involved in Regional One Health, which is our level 1 trauma center and community hospital here in the region, because of the incredible work that they're doing. And I will continue to do that in my life. I will continue to make sure that I have meaningful challenges and endeavors that inspire me, and surround myself with smart, capable people that I enjoy.
Let's imagine I am a young graduate. Unfortunately, I'm not, but let's imagine I'm a young graduate, just going out college and willing to make a dent in the medical industry with strong ambitions. What is the suggestion that you're giving me?
I will say a couple of things. One is I will go back to something I said earlier, which is don't be afraid to be intentional and to take chances. Go for the things that go after the things that you want to try and do, and don't not do it just because you are scared or because you think you might not succeed. Put your heart and soul into it, and don't give up, and work really hard to do that. One of the ways that you can do that, and one of the things that I've always tried to do, especially in my early part of the career, is make suggestions. So come to the table with solutions. Lots of people can say, oh, here's something that we need to do, or this is the problem. Come to the table with solutions. Present to your boss or to your colleagues, here's an idea that I have. Here's something that I think that we should do as a company. Here's a gap that we have, something that's missing. Present that, and then say to them, and I'd be happy to work on that if you will let me, or I'd be happy to build a team to make that happen. And especially if you're in the early part of your career, there's no reason why you shouldn't do that, because it demonstrates that you're ambitious. It demonstrates that you have ideas, and it demonstrates that you have the ability to try and solve a problem and work on it. Maybe they'll say, and quite frankly, that's how my career at Apple went. And then they would come back and think about it and they said, that's actually a really good idea. Would you be willing to work on that? Would you like to put a team together? Why don't you take this to the next step? And I think that that's always good, because it'll create opportunities. Now, sometimes they might just say, I don't think that's the direction we need to go. Okay. Maybe they then take it and run with it. That's also okay, right? But you always need to push yourself, bring smart ideas to the table, and be willing to work on them.
Excellent, Jodie. Thanks a lot. I really thank you. It's been a pleasure to listen to you and to learn a lot from you. I thank you for your time, and I'm really looking forward to having a second discussion. Maybe we can talk about the future step that you were mentioning.
All right. Thank you so much, Elvio. I've really enjoyed this time together.